have a full vision of what you want, or do you just have a vision of what you don't want? We have to separate the two, because we can know what we don't want, but we're not building towards what we actually do want. Hi, my name is Joanna Sabri, and today I will be talking about the power of choice and how empowering it can be when we choose with intention. And you're probably wondering, well, if I made a choice, isn't it intentional? Well, with that, that's not always the case. We have choices that are automatic, we have ones that are easy, and then we have ones that are habitual. And the ones that are habitual are the ones I want to address in today's video, because those choices are the ones we make based on out of normal habits and sometimes as a reaction to our current circumstances. Because when it comes to choice and the power behind it, we have to understand that we don't have control of everything that happens in our lives, but we do have to acknowledge how we react and decide moving forward to build the best version of ourselves. This video is geared towards people who may have had humble beginnings. Maybe you didn't have the best role models, maybe you didn't grow up in the best neighborhood, but you knew early on that you wanted better for yourself. You knew early on that you were destined for more. And with that, I think sometimes when we grow up in these humbling circumstances, we start pushing forward based on how we don't want to live versus what we genuinely want. And we have to give ourselves grace, because you took initiative to have a better life. You took initiative to get away from certain situations. You took initiative to create a better future for yourself and your future generations. And with all of that, I believe that all of us have great goals, aspirations, and dreams for ourselves, right? The fact that you're here watching this video today, you're already taking a step towards thriving and having a better future. So knowing that we want better for ourselves, I want you to sit back and think, what is something that you dream of? What is something that you see your future self having? And a lot of us may say we want a thriving business, we want a big house, we want to have our mind right, we want to have our bodies right. There are so many different things. But with that, I want to ask you, can you be specific about that? So if you said you want a big house, I want to ask you, so who's going to be living in that house? How many bedrooms is it going to have? What state is it going to be in? How are you going to afford the house? You know, we have to be that specific when we're thinking about goals. Or let's say you want to work on your mental health. How are you going to work on your mental health? Are you getting a therapist, or do you plan on building the relationships you already have around you? Do you plan on cutting people off? There are so many different ways to dissect the goal and dream. And the reason I'm speaking to this is because we can say we want all these things, right? But if we're not being intentional about how we're getting there, it separates us and the goal a little bit further than what it would if we were a little more intentional on our path on getting there. So if I'm saying I want a house, I need to be having conversations with real estate agents. If I'm saying I want to live in a certain state, I need to be viewing the houses in those states. So it's important to align our actions with our desires and not our fears. Because now we're making decisions to deter away from how we grew up versus actually making decisions that will reflect what we truly accomplished for our entire vision. And that's another thing. Do you have a full vision of what you want, or do you just have a vision of what you don't want? We have to separate the two, because we can know what we don't want, but we're not building towards what we actually do want. So part of the reason I'm making this video is because I want us to be more intentional about how we maneuver life. Something that inspired me to make this was watching a TikTok of Clark. She was sharing a story. Well, first, Clark is a TikToker, right? She's about 24 now. She's very successful. She recently just bought her first house, and I'm just so happy for her. And one day she shared a story about how her mom was going through their stuff, and she found a vision board that Clark made when she was 12. And in this vision board, Clark had like what school she wanted to go to. Like she put that she wanted to go to an Ivy League school. I believe she put in some organization she wanted. I think she put that she wanted a house, and she put all her desires in there, and she was able to look back on it and say, you know what, I've accomplished all of this. I did what I said I was going to do. And that right there, I was like, you know what, I wish I had that amount of intentionality when I was younger. And Clark, she didn't have, she wasn't growing up in a wealthy neighborhood. She grew up in a single parent household, and her mom was a teacher. So I'm pointing that out because it's not like she had it all growing up, right? She was very intentional about how she was going to do these things. And in hindsight, when I'm thinking about decisions I've made, I wish I was a little more intentional with it. And so looking at Clark's story, I'm thinking back to like even just high school and going to college. I'm like, You know, when I decided to go to college, I didn't even, excuse me, I didn't even have a specific college I wanted to go to. I didn't even, you know, my major, I just chose it based on like 2 subjects I liked. I didn't have a vision of what I would want to do with that major. Honestly, you guys, I majored in mechanical engineering, and beforehand, I didn't even know the full extent of what engineers did. I just know that they do things that apply math and physics, and that was my interest, but I didn't know the full extent. And so I think to Clark's vision board that she made when she was 12, and how I would have used it in hindsight, I would have went into college, you know, being a little more specific about, you know what, this is what I want to do. These are the organizations I want to be a part of. Me majoring in mechanical engineering, I'm probably thinking about the industry I want to go into, right? But the whole time, you know, me going to college, it was more off the strength of getting away from the situation I grew up in. I didn't want to have a future where I'm broke and struggling and moving around, right? I wanted a future that was a little more secure. And even then, I didn't know like what salaries engineers made. You know, I just went on. I wasn't intentional, guys. I just wasn't intentional. And I feel like sometimes when we have these humble beginnings, we're just trying to do the next best thing. We're just trying to we're finding ourselves still, right? And I think now in hindsight, now that I've graduated college and have been working in my career for a little over a year, I am way more intentional now, like even now about how I want to maneuver my career and what positions I want to go into. But before, intentionality was out the window because I was just so focused on surviving. And I remember Dr. Cheyenne Bryan, she made a video where she stated, if you are surviving, you are not thriving. And that spoke to me because I was like, okay, I'm making all these decisions, and while good is coming out of it, I'm just throwing paint at a wall. And you know, you start to see a vision with all that paint on the wall, but it's not clear. It's not, you know, it's not a fully painted canvas. So I encourage us to create painting a canvas, plan what colors we want on it, what shapes do we want on there, because it's not going to help us if we're just throwing stuff at the wall. Let's recognize that surviving is not the best way of us thriving. And this can look like us not communicating in relationships. This can look like us not saving because we're so busy trying to survive and that we can't even put no money, $10 away a week, you know? Or, you know, we're so busy trying to work, do school and this, that we aren't effectively communicating, you know? So we have to be aware of the things that we're doing when we're in this survival mode, because I've been there as well. And I think I'll make a separate video on survival mode if you guys want. But I just want to point this out when we were talking about the power of choice, because we're not making intentional decisions. We're doing it to survive. And I just want you to know that it doesn't always have to be, and we shouldn't have to always be in that fight mode. We shouldn't have to feel like we always have to prove something. I want you to just sit back and be intentional and think about the best version of yourself. As we're shifting our mindset from surviving to thriving, there are some things that we gotta brush up. At the end of the day, we're motivated to get away from a certain situation, right? But if we're not going out of our way to plan fully for the future, it's taken away from what we truly desire. I empathize with anyone who's in survival mode, because even when I was pushing and grinding, you know, I'm just worried about my account not being negative. I'm just worried about, you know, how can I pass this exam, instead of genuinely thinking, okay, what happens when I pass this exam, get my degree? What happens after that? You know, it's much bigger than what we're going through right now, and I think that's another thing we have to address. The moment right now, what's tough for us right now is not always going to be the case. So with that, I'm going to say it's time to break those habits. It's time to become more intentional. And I'm going to give you some things that you can do today just to kind of get out of that, no, I'm only doing this because I want to move away from my mom, or I'm only doing this because I want to get more money. I want you to have more of a well-rounded future plan for yourself. I want you to think about, all right, this is how much I want to have in my savings by this year so that I can put a down payment on a house later in the year. You know, I want it to be that specific and precise, so that way when we are thinking, because I just wish I did it. I wish I was that intentional, but it's never too late to start. Okay? don't be mistaken, it's never too late to start. It's never too late to have a dream. It's never too late to get started with something. Now it's time to turn a new page. And I think what we can do today to get started and be a little more intentional, not even a little more, I want you to be a lot more intentional. So I want you, for the first step, I want you to just take out a piece of paper and write down all of the things you want. Just write it all down, get specific with it. This is just a rough draft, okay? Just write down everything. And then I want you to take 3 things that you know, like, okay, this is a non-negotiable. This is what I want for real. I want this big house. I want this car. I want to have the best mental health. Take those 3 things, and then I want you to become very concise on those goals. I want you to create SMART goals for each one and ask yourself, is this reactive or is this something I genuinely want? Are you doing that out of spite of how you grew up, or are you doing that because that's genuinely what you want for yourself? If you're saying you want to go to college, are you doing that in spite of your mom saying you can't go? Or are you doing that because you genuinely want to go and you want to study something and you want to make a difference in the world? I need that key level of intentionality. To close the video, I want you to know that you are more than capable of shaping your future. You have a good head on your shoulders, and I encourage you to continue to make intentional decisions. It's hard being, growing up a certain way and, taking yourself out of that mindset and placing yourself into something larger than what you could have imagined, right? But now is your time. I see that you're already taking the first step by watching this video, so congratulations. And I hope to see you again. So if you enjoyed this video, I would like to see your comments and kind of see what are some things that you want to do to try to get out of survival mode, or what challenges are you facing as you're trying to be more intentional. So this is my first YouTube video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, or subscribe for more.